Hello, people of the internet. So you've built your Flutter UI, but how do you actually get real data into it? In this video, we're going to connect our Flutter app to a REST API and send request. We'll also handle the response and decode the JSON. And plus, we're also going to display the data in our UI. So let's get into it. First, we're going to cd into the directory where we want to create our project. And then inside that directory, we're going to run the command flutter create. We don't want to create a new directory under that, so we're going to create it inside that folder. So flutter create space dot, so that creates the Flutter project inside that folder. Okay. Also, as a side note, so it seems that I entered the wrong command. It should be create like this. That should work. Yes, it's creating the project. As it is creating, wow, that was pretty fast. So I have this software. It is open source. It's called Screen Copy. It helps you display your, it helps you mirror your phone on your screen like this. If maybe your Android Studio is not, you have RAM issues in your laptop, you can use this free version. So that was just by the way. So let's open Android Studio and start coding our project. See, it's starting up. So I'm going to split my screen like this so that you can also see what I'm building and the UI at the same time. So let me split it like that. Then here, I'm going to switch the project to this. Nice. Then I'm going to do away with the README file. Usually Android Studio takes a bit of time to boot up, but it's okay. So we have this default startup template given by Flutter. We're just going to code everything from scratch. So we'll start with our main function. And then inside our main function, we're supposed to run up. And it imported Cupertino, but in this case, we want to use material app. Nice. Then we'll create a stateless widget. So maybe let's call it API consumer. Then it extends stateless widget in Flutter. Extends is a keyword for inheritance. So that is, you are inheriting the properties of a certain parent class. So in this case, the parent class that we are inheriting from is a stateless widget. So then our constructor API consumer. So we do super.key. Then we have to write that. And then widget, the function is called build, and then it takes parameter of type build context. We are going to name it as context like this. Then we are going to return material app, which is the starting point of our app. Inside material app, during development, there is usually a debug symbol there in the Flutter page. So by this debug show checked mode banner, we set it to false. That banner is going to go away. By default, it's set to true, so we override it and set it to false. Then we define home. Now this is the first page that is going to run. Then now in here, we call API consumer like this, like that. So then we could just have the home page here, but let's create a separate file for it. So inside lib, let's call it home.dat. Then now it's not going to be a stateless widget because we expect change in UI, change in state. So it's going to be a stateful widget. So how you create a stateful widget, you can just write stful, then you hit tab. So that will create for you a stateful widget, and then you give it a name. So let's call it home page. Then to that, we can always import material.dat. Sorry. So it's material.dat. Then we'll turn on scaffold here. Then I have so this is what we want to create. We'll use this one as our guide for creating. So this is what we want to replicate. Yes. So at the top we have our app bar. Then it's a really simple UI because we want to focus on how to consume the API part. So we are going to have app bar here. Then let's give our app bar a title. So title there is consuming API. Like that. So we have to connect this one to our main file here. So here we do home page. So at this point, I'm going to allow this app to build. And building it for the first time usually takes a little bit long. So let me pause for a moment, then I'll resume once it's done building. So as you can see, our application has built successfully. Let me minimize on this side so that you can see my code clearly. So let's go to the home page and continue building our UI. So this is what we want. As you can see right now, the background color is white, but we want this color. So if you're not sure of the color code that you want to use, you can always use these free websites to pick colors. You can just go and search color picker. Then there's one that I usually find interesting to use, this one here. So I'm going to upload my image, then just tap on a certain point, and from there I'll be able to pick my color. So let's pick the image that we want. Let's pick this image. Then right now I want the background color for the app bar. So it will give me this color code. So back to our app. At the app bar, we'll just do background color. It's going to be color. Then we pass in our color code, but we prefix it with 0xFF. Then we paste it in. But we're going to remove this hash here. So let's hot reload and see. It's reloading. It should. Oh, it has hot restarted. Okay. So you see that's the background color, but now the title is not visible. So let's change the style, the color, and have a text style of let's reload. Then from that picture, the title was centered, so center title, let's make it to be true. So that's okay. So the next part, we're going to code up the body. So the body, let's have a look at our, so if you look at this, we have something like a container here. And then we have, if you look there, there's a background, some kind of background there. So that is the background of the scaffold. So let's set it to black and then have this general container here like this. So the background of the scaffold, so let's set it to black. And again, our focus here is not on UI, so there's an error. Okay, so right now the background is black. Body, let's have a container. So then we can decorate a container with this box decoration. We can give it a border radius, circular border radius. Let's do 30. Then inside our container, just have a child just to see how it goes right now. So you can have a card. And then maybe inside that card, just have a temporary text just to see how it looks. So yes, we have a background here that is black. That is what we wanted. So what's next? Okay, so we have a container there. A container. Then this is what we want. Nice. So we have a card here. Let's style our card. As you can see, there is some form of elevation. So let's give it an elevation of 4. And then we have shape. So let's make it a rounded rectangular border with a border radius of maybe 20. And then apart from the shape, we can have shadow color because I see some bluish. So colors. Blue. So let's see how that looks like. I know it's not done yet. Okay, so the next thing we want to inside our card here. Let's see what is inside the card. So inside our card, we have something that looks like a row because we have elements in a row. So it's a row first, then a column, right? So let's have a row. But there's padding because you can see there's space, there's some space there. So let's start with padding. Insets. Then we give it a padding of 12, just like that. Now inside we can provide row. Then now inside that row, the first thing is something like a circular avatar. Circular avatar. So circular avatar, let's click on that one. Then let's give it a radius of 15 and see how it's going to turn out. Then for now, let's give it a background color of blue, but we'll check on that. Then, of course, it has a child. So the child, let's have a text now, then ID like that. Then after inside the row, so there's some space. So use some size box, maybe a width of 10. And now we have a column. So column, children. Then for now, let's just provide text. We'll improve it later. So we have name. So now the name is David Young. Then we can copy this and change it multiple times. So email. Email. We have address. Address I can use one city. So I know it doesn't look the way we wanted it yet, but we'll still make modifications in it. Okay. So that's what we have for now, which means we made a mistake somewhere. Okay, that's okay. So you can see the circle avatar is way okay. So we have a row here. Then first element is circular avatar. Circle avatar there. Okay, so I think we need to define main axis alignment for the row. So cross axis alignment. Cross axis alignment. Then make it start. And let's just paste what we had and see. Yeah. So what was happening by default, the cross-axis alignment of a row is in the center. So that's why we had this one going way down. Also, if you look at this image here, we have name, email, and address are aligned at the start. So for a column, we have to set the main axis alignment to start. You did with the cross-axis alignment. Let's see. Start. See how that is. It seems to have solved it. So also let's check this image. So there's some space here. There's some space for that card, and then the color of the container is same as that for the app bar. So let's correct that. So container, where's our container? Where's our container? Here. So we can just define the color here. It should be inside the decoration part. Decoration. And then, so I'm going to pick the color that was defined in the app bar. So let's use that color, which means we are also going to have to change our edit hot reload. Did I put the color? This. Let's see. So this is the container. And this one usually gives an error if you have decoration and color at the same time. So you see, that gives an error. This one should be here, it should be defined here. Let's just load that. Let's see. For reloading, indeed, and just start it afresh. Should done one couple of seconds. But then pause so that it can build. So it has built successfully. Still our color is not changing, but it seems like my card is covering most of the parts. So let me also give it a color so that it cannot overlay the of our container. So let's do colors black. Then we reload that. So you see now it takes that color. The next thing we want to do is it matching? Is it matching? So as you can see right now, my card is covering the entire page, so it's lying above the container. So what we're going to do, we're going to wrap this card inside list view.builder, because if you see here, we have multiple cards, but it's not like one card after another. So this one, instead of having a child, which is card, we're going to have list view.builder. Then list view.builder takes item count and item builder. So here we have 5 items. Then the item builder. So we're going to have context, text, context, index. Then inside the list view.builder, we are going to return now the card. So we're going to return our card that we had coded up. So let's reload and see if there's any changes on that. So yes, that corrects it. So all we have to do right now is to change the color of our text. So colors dot white. So let's take this and paste it times down here. Load that one. So at least now it's visible. We could do better, but we can work with that. So another thing that I'm going to change is the color of our ID, our circle avatar. Let's make the text inside it white. Then pick the color from our color picker here. So I'm going to look exactly on that. And it gives us that. So to our background color, instead of blue, we are going to use the color code that we've been given by our color picker. As we said, we prefix it with the 0xff. So when we reload that, it's refusing to reload. Let me first stop it. So as it is building, that was for the UI part. As it is building, let me just cover on the error that we had. We were supposed to have a container. Then inside the container, from the UI that we were seeing here, we were supposed to have cards. So instead of when you pass a card inside a container, it takes the maximum space. So that's why we wrapped it inside a list view.builder. Then we say that the item count should be 5. Then now we return a single card. So that's why we're supposed to have like 5 cards. So as it is building, I'll also show you the API that we want to consume. We are using JSON placeholder. This is the API that we want to consume. So I'll attach the link in the video description. So this is what we want to consume right now. As you can see, it is an endpoint for users. We have ID, we have name, we have username, we have email and address. So we only want to capture four parts. We want to capture the ID of the user, the name, the ID, name, email, and address. And in address, we only want to capture the city. So that's the next thing that we're going to do. As you can see, it has now built successfully and it looks more or less like our initial design. So we'll create a separate file here and call it, let's just call it api.dat. I'm going to minimize this part. So as we said, we want to consume 4 fields. So the first one is going to be user ID. Then the second field is going to be name. The third field is going to be email. And then the next one is going to be address. And the address, we are going to consume city. So it is address, city. So inside this file, we are going to create our data model. So let's have a class. Let's call it maybe API consumer. Then we are going to define our class variables. And those are the fields that we want to consume. So the first one is integer ID. Next one is string name. The other one is string email. Then string city. So let's just do address. Then we have to initialize those fields inside our constructor. Let's create constructor, then API consume. So we do required this dot ID, we start with ID. Required this dot name. Then we do address email. No, next one is email. Next one is address. Then after that, we're going to create a factory constructor. So factory constructor, then the naming convention of a factory constructor is that you start with the name of your constructor, and then use dot from JSON. So this is like the naming convention. Then if you look at our API, basically what you're going to get is a string, a map of type string, dynamic, because then we name it JSON. You can name it JSON. So if you look at our response here, so you see this one is nested as string. The value is a string, the key is a string, then the value is dynamic. It can either be like this one is an integer, the key is a string, the value is a string also. So, and in this case, the key is a string, the value is another map. So that's why we have this factory constructor here, then its type is of map string dynamic, then we give it a name, JSON. So inside it, and also a factory constructor must return the constructor itself. So we return that. Then now this point is usually very important, because if you mess up with the naming convention, then you will get errors. So here it is JSON. Then you look at your API and you see what key is used there. You see the key used is ID. So here it is JSON ID. Same for name. Name. Same for email. So if you mess up with any letter, so that will be wrong. You will get errors, and that's the essence of having a data model or using a factory constructor. Because when you will be consuming this in your UI, you will just use dot notation, so dot ID, dot name, dot email. So not every time you will have to use this access technique here. So that's why we need a data model, and we also use a factory constructor inside it. So when handling this address part, you also need to be careful. So if you look at our API, inside address, we have the key address. Then the key, the value is now a map. So now inside the map, we have other keys. We have street, we have suit, we have city. But the only key that we are interested in is the city. So we have a key address and another key city, so that we get to that value. So that's what we are going to do. So it's going to be, sorry. It's going to be JSON at address. So the key is address. And then, so that we get to the value that we want, we get to another key city. So you see the way it's nested. if I can show you that again. So we have the key address, but the value is a map. So inside that map, we have different keys, but the only key we are interested right now is city. So I hope that's okay. So done with that. So that's your data model, and as you can see, we are using it in a separate file so that we can separate our UI and our data model or logic. So now inside this file, we are going to have another function. So if you look at this this API, what it returns is a list, because if you look at the top, we have that opening that symbolizes a list, and then at the bottom we have that closing that symbolizes a list. So this API returns us a list. Okay. So the function that we will use to consume this API, because this is just our data model, we have not yet created the function that will consume it. So the function will be of the type future, which has a list in it. So future means, because when you are making a network request, in this case, when we are hitting our API endpoint, we are making a network request, which does not give us a response immediately. It can take some time. So that's why we are going to give it a type future, and the future has a list. A list of what? A list of API consumer. So that's the essence of using a data model. So it is of type future because it doesn't give you a response immediately. Then our API endpoint has a list of users. So we have a list of users, and each user has the data as the data model API consumer, which we defined here. Then we can give it a name. Maybe we call it fetch users. So fetch users. Then obviously it is going to be asynchronous, because, and I hope you understand the concept of asynchronous. So it is going to be async. So now inside here, we have to define our URL, because if you see, this is JSON placeholder.typicode.com/users. I'm going to include this URL in our description. But the right way of storing your links is not within the code. That is not safe. So we are going to store it in an environment file. So in at the root of your project, you're going to create an environment file. So just do .env, and by that you would have created an environment file. So an environment file is a file that you create, and usually you don't push it to GitHub. Okay. So .env, and then maybe I can call it base URL. Then now I paste my API endpoint in there. Then for you to, so as we said, you should create your env file at the root of your project. Then come to your pubspec.yaml, then go to assets. Go to where we have assets. Then you highlight it up to assets. Then you hit Control backspace. So that one will give you that red mark. Then tap at the front of assets, then hit backspace once. And that will do away with the error. Then just write dot env. So that will enable us to read our environment variables. Then the next thing, because we want to load our environment variables in the best way, so we are going to use a package. called flutter.env. So I'm going to add it here. So let me disable that one. So I'm going to do flutter add flutter.env. So this is the package that you want to add so that we can use it to load our env. But we'll be loading our env the very first time our app opens. So that's why we'll load it inside our main file. But because in the process of loading your env file, you can have errors, or sometimes it could be missing, or maybe it was not configured correctly. So because you don't want your app to crash in the first instance that you open it, so we are going to have a try catch block here. Then now inside our try, so let's paste whatever we had there. So we do widgets.ensure widgets flutter binding dot ensure initialized. So that should be a semicolon. Then because the env variable, sometimes it could not be there. So this one should be a future type future void. We are not returning any, so future void. Then now this one should be async. So in the process of loading our env, now we have to await. We have to await .env load. So we want to load it, then we give it the file name. The file name is .env. So at this point, if you restart your app or you run your app and you see it freeze or you see it crash, it means that the setup for your env file was not correct. So I'm going to do flutter run. So as it is building, so in here, maybe you can print so that you can debug, you can just print an error. And so let's go back to our API.dat and continue with writing our function. So we want to load our base URL here. So how we load it is now we use the .env package that we had, because we said the reason why we are storing our API endpoints in env file is for security purposes, so it should not appear anywhere in your code. So you do .env. Then at this point, you will pass in the name of the variable that you had provided in your env file, just like this. So at this point, we've loaded our env file. So you see our app has built successfully. It means our environment file has been loaded successfully. So we could say final URL is equals to URI.pass. So in there, we pass our base URL. So URI.pass, I think it kind of checks the format of your URL, so that, you know, some people like to give malicious URL. So this is that way of ensuring that this is a valid URL. So URI.pass. Then now we want to communicate with our API. So in order to communicate with our API, we need another package. So the package is called HTTP. So flutter pub add HTTP. So that should be quick. So HTTP has been added. So what we do, we can have a variable. So because in the process of talking to a backend or an API, certain things can happen. It can either return a success or an error. So if an error occurs and you don't handle that error correctly, your app will crash. So anytime you are making a network request, you need to wrap your code inside a try and catch block. So we'll do final response. So let's store our whatever our server gives us inside a variable called response. So how we are going to do that? First of all, we need to import HTTP. So import HTTP, then as HTTP so that we can prefix it with HTTP methods. So if you look at this API here that we have, this server, this one is like a server. So if you look at this one here, the only way, because we are not writing to it, we want to consume data from a certain API. So what we're going to do, we are going to use the get method, get HTTP method. So we are going to do await HTTP dot get. Then the get method only takes one parameter, which is the URL. So, and the URL in this case is the one that we had in our env file, which was loaded here. Then I'm going to say if response. So response usually has certain parts. It has body, it has status code, it has headers, and usually those are the main ones. So for now, we'll check if the status code, if response.status code is equals to 200. So you'll go and check on the status codes. We have 200 for okay, and also we have for 201 for created. We have 400 for bad request. We have 404 for not found. We have 500 for internal server error. So we have different status codes that are used when you are consuming an API. So when you say if response.status code is equals to 200, that means that everything, when you did http.get and you hit this URL, the status code that was returned was 200. It means everything was okay. So if everything is okay, then we need to extract the body of our response, because this is a list of users and it is stored on this URL. So when we make a request by saying http.get on this URL, it gives us a body. So this is the body that will be given to us. So this is the body. And because we've already checked the status code, so now this is the body that we want to check. So we say final. Maybe we can call it body. Yeah, we can call it body. So final body is equals to, but an API usually replies to a response with a JSON format, which Flutter does not understand. So for us to consume it in a good way, we need to decode it first. So we do JSON decode. So we code response.body. We decode the response.body because we said a response. So you see here, we're doing http.get. That gives us a response. The response has the headers, it has the body and different parts. So in this case, we are saying we want to decode it. So we are converting it to a manner that our Dart language or Flutter code can understand it. So body, response.body. But what is the type of our body? Our body is a list of dynamic values. Because if you look at this, it starts with a list at the top and a list at the bottom. So it's a list of dynamic values. Dynamic to means it can have a map, it can have a string, it can have all kinds of data that we have. So it's a list of dynamic. So we can define that so that maybe we don't confuse ourselves. So it is a list of dynamic like that. So I don't want to name it body. It's the body, yes, which is okay, but I want to call it users. So let's call it user. So what we are going to do, we want to, because it is a list now, because usually in that, how you define a list is you just do, maybe it's a list of integers. It's a list of integers. Then we have certain integers, 1, 2, 3, 5. So instead of having a list of integers, we have a list of dynamic values. Okay. So we have a list of dynamic values. So we want to iterate through this list. So we have a list of users here. So we have a list of users. So we want to iterate through this list. Usually you could do for I in, because if we, let's say the list was called A. So for I in A, then you do a certain thing with that value. So we could use that one here. We could say for I in A, but we have a better way because you have that dot map method in that, or in Flutter, that is known. So we can have final, let's call that user, because now that is a single user. Because if you were to iterate, let's say these are users, so user 1, user 2, user 3, user 4, because we are mirroring what our API is returning. So if you were to iterate through them, for every single instance, you will have a single user. So final user is equals to, so now instead of using a for loop, we'll just use the map method in that. So users.map. Then we are going to map a single user. Then we'll use that shorthand syntax. And inside it, we will return our factory constructor. So we do API.from JSON. Then now in here, so we pass use. Then we do it dot to list, because it's a list, right? It's a list. Okay, I hope that's okay. So an equivalent of that would be, maybe we could say for user in users. So the type of user is still a list, I think. So for list of user in users, then we would return API consumer dot from JSON. Then you would pass in this user here, user. Then there's an error. It is saying replace the type. So probably this is the type we are talking about, but that is the equivalent of okay, so dot to list. So API consumer for user in user. So I think I messed up with that, but if you're not sure, you can always do this. So for final user in users, if you're not sure of the type, you can always do that. But you see, that is a little bit, okay, it's okay if you want to do that, but I prefer using this one here, where I'm just saying final user, users.map, then you map a single user. So for that particular user, you return it to, now you return. So because this is shorthand syntax, so we are not going to use the keyword return. So you return API, you return our factory constructor, then our factory constructor now takes that single user and then converts it to a list, because this is what our factory constructor was doing. It was returning this data model here. So then you return user. Yeah. So this. So that is if there is no, if the status code is okay, is 200. But if anything else, maybe it's maybe 500. So what does it say? So we need to also post the type with future list of API consumer. What did we have here? Yeah. How did we end up having this one here? Initially, we defined it as list, right? It was list of consumer. That is what we had at first. I don't know how we ended up with that, the other one. So if something else occurs, maybe the response is maybe 500, the status code is 500 or 400 or any other, that is not okay. So yeah, usually you can have or 201, but if there is an error, you just throw an exception. So right now we are just printing general errors. We are just throwing and saying an error has occurred, but there are better ways of handling these errors gracefully. Then also here in the catch part, you throw that error. Okay, so that is okay. So now this is our data model. This is our data model. And then this is us. Then this is our factory constructor. Then now this is us connecting to the API that we have, connecting to our server using our connection string with base URL. So what remains is now displaying it on the UI because we have this code connecting us to our API. So what remains is displaying it on the UI. So our UI is homepage view. So the first thing that you do, you see this type here because this is the type that you are going to display in our UI. So you copy that type and then you say let, then maybe you can call it fetched users. So by let I mean because I had explained the concept of future. That one we understand, and we had explained why it is a list of API consumers. So it's late because at first it will not be assigned to any value. So, but I'll come to that. Then we are going to override that. There's a video I talked about method overriding, but that is not for the scope of this video. So we'll have the init state function here. So the init state usually runs once when your app starts. So when you open your app, it runs first. So super dot init state. So let's have it there. Then we want to have a function that assigns this fetched user to the function that is actually going to fetch that user. So let's say void load users. So we're going to load users. Then inside it, we are going to say fetch user. So it's actually fetch users because it is not a single user that we are fetching. So let's rename it to fetch users. So fetch users is equals to, now we are going to assign it to this function here. that is fetching the users, because this is what is actually fetching the users and giving us the response. Then that response, it is a response that has a list of users. So we are going through that list and returning a single user every time. Okay. So here we assign it to that. And you see there is no errors because the types are consistent. Okay. So fetch user is equals to that. So then now inside the init state, because we want every time we open our app, we hit that server. We hit that server to see if they are users. So I hope that's okay. The reason why we defined it here under state is because we want these fetch users to be accessible somewhere within our UI. I mean, we could have just done all this inside a certain function and then call it here, but we would have issues when accessing it in our UIs. And that's why you see this one is grayed out, because the value field fetch users isn't used. We've not used it yet. Here, we've just reassigned it because we are saying fetched users. We've given it a value, but we've not used it yet. So in our UI, we are going to use it. So initially, we had returned list view.builder. Should have been building this, so to run. So initially, we'd returned list view.builder, and we had coded these values like 5, and that's why we had 5 cards. But now we want to build UI from values that we get from our API. So the widget that we use for that, usually there are multiple widgets that you can use, but the most common ones are stream builder and future builder. In this case, we are going to use a future builder because we are hitting the server and getting response when it's ready. So for stream builder is something you'd use it if you get continuous response, like continuously. But for future builder, we get the response not immediately. Okay. So here, instead of returning list view.builder, we are going to copy it in memory. So I'm not deleting it. I'm just copying it temporarily in memory like this. Then now, instead of returning it first, we first return a future builder. Then a future builder takes a future and a builder, just like the name. So then the future will be this value here, fetched users. And what does fetched users have? Fetched users has fetch users, which is a function that we use to get our response from our API. So I hope that's okay. So we come to home here. Then now our future becomes fetch users. Let's go fetch users. Then now inside our builder usually takes two parameters. If you hover over it, you'll see it takes a build context and a snapshot. So a snapshot is like a picture of whatever we have in our API. Then the type is, of course, it's a widget. It is of type widget function. So it's a widget function which takes build context and a snapshot, which is a list. You see? So the type is a list of async snapshot of list API consumer. So sometimes when you're not sure of what a widget returns or what it does, you just hover over it, and if you can translate what it says, then you'd be okay. So here you can specify it, build context like that, or just say context, just to make your work neat. So you can just say context, then snapshot. You can call it anything, but by convention, most Flutter developers I see they use snapshot. So we said that snapshot is like a single picture of whatever we have in our. So we would say, so this snapshot, maybe it can have data, it can have errors, it can have it can be maybe in waiting mode, maybe it's still making that request. So maybe if you hit your server, you don't get a request immediately. Sometimes there's slow internet, or maybe you don't even have internet. So snapshot is that instance, whatever is happening. So we can check those conditions. Maybe we can say if snapshot dot connection state. So connection state is the state of your connection with that endpoint. So if snapshot dot connection state is equals to connection state dot waiting, so it means we have hit the server, but there is no response yet, so we are waiting. So if that is the case, then we need to return a circular progress indicator, but we want to load it in the center. So we return a center widget, because if you hovered over builder, it was returning a widget. So you return a center, and then inside that center, we have a circular progress indicator. Circular progress indicator. Maybe we can give it a color. Which color works for us? Maybe we could do white. Colors, white. Yeah, so let's have that. So if it is waiting, we'll do that. Then now else if our snapshot, which we said is an instance of whatever is happening in our server. So if snapshot has data, now that means we've hit our server and we've gotten a response, and that response has data. So what do we want to do in this case? So if that's the case, then we want to return our list view.builder, the one that we had copied in memory. So I'll just paste it like that. So we return list view.builder, but we want to display it first. So you see here, if snapshot.has data, now that data is available, so we want to store it somewhere. So we say final data. Actually, let's call it users, because now we have, because the data is of users. So it is snapshot, because snapshot is what has that. So snapshot dot data. Then by using this null check symbol in that, you are saying that at that point, the data is going to be available because we've already checked this. So you must include that one there. So then, because here we had coded the length of our list to be 5. So now we are not going to code it. We don't know the length that our API returns. So because if you hover over snapshot users, it's of type list. So you see it is of type list API consumer. So that's why you can do dot length thing here. So we have users dot length. So after that, what follows is now inside the item builder, now we want to build every single user. So we said this one is a list. And how do you access an element within a list? Usually you just use the name of the list and then the index of that element. So what item builder gives you, it gives you the state of that process and then the index. So the index is what we are going to use to access a particular user at a certain index, because it's an iteration. So final user is equals to, now because we called them, we called it the data that we obtained, we called it users. So it is going to be users at index. So users at a certain index like that. So that is now a single user. Okay. Then if you hover over user, you will see that the type is API consumer because we had defined that. So, and that's the importance of having a data model. So it's API consumer. So now, because you had created a data model and you also had a factory constructor, now you can just use dot, 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 and you access whatever you want. So you come to ID, you just say dot user dot ID because we had defined it. But you see, ID is of type string, but ID is of type integer, but text usually takes a string. So we have to convert it to string, and that's okay. Then name now, you use string interpolation. So you say user dot name. So you see the importance of having this kind of if we didn't have our factory constructor, then we would have to do every time we would say user at name, user at name, and this could still work. The problem is that what if you make a mistake and you write this? So that will give you errors. So you just make it easy and you just say user.name. Then here you will also use string interpolation. Then we say user.email. Then also here you say user.city. So it was address, user.address. So if we didn't have that, then we would have to do it manually and maybe say user at address, then also at city. But you see, we had covered this, so it makes our work easier. And this one could lead to certain errors. So that's okay. So there's still one error. You remember we started by saying if connection state is equals to that, then else if. So it means we've not closed our loop, our conditional statement. So we do else. So else, it means that there is some kind of error. Yeah, because we said it can either be waiting, it can either have data or error. So we can also return, we want to display our error in the center, so we can return a center widget, and then inside it, we just have a text. For now, we can style that one, but let's just have a text and we say an error has occurred. And then we do this. So you see the error goes away. And if you find value in this kind of tutorials that I'm making, please feel free to like my videos, subscribe, and leave a comment there if you have any question. So at this point, I'm going to just reload and see if it worked. Hooray, so it worked. As you can see, we have name, we have ID here, name, and we have a list here up to 10. So that brings us to the end of our class. So thank you and have a nice one.